Um, Thanks again to those that have been asking questions, and for people online, feel free to keep sending those in. We do have a team that is answering some of those, maybe the easier ones to answer instead of taking some Q&A times. We do have some folks moderating that, so please continue to send in your questions if you are online. For those of you in the room, excuse me, we will have more time over the course of the day to do Q&A as always. And again, our whole last session of the day, so from 2 to 3, is just going to be Q&A with technical staff here. And that can also be a place where you ask additional questions if you've got anything else related to volunteers or weekend flow or anything else. How do we do X, Y, and Z? We'll have people around to help. We can do that too, or over in the other room also after we dismiss later. This particular session, what we're going to do here, so I'm going to talk for the first little bit, and then Mark Johnson, our audio director, is going to come up in just a few minutes as well and talk about kind of some, I guess, maybe important concepts or ideas that can scale to anybody. So regardless of your environment, your budget, size of the space you've got, your church, whatever, there are some ideas dealing with audio, video, and lighting that we think are kind of notable, that everybody kind of needs to be aware of or at least consider. So we're going to talk through some of that. And just a little bit of a point of clarity, how we are structured here, our audio department is managed through our worship team. And so I specifically oversee video and lighting, and then Mark, our audio director, he handles audio, hence the title, and he reports directly up to our worship pastor. I report up to a different lead team level pastor who manages IT and creative, so Kellen's department, and all of our online and digital and web development type stuff. So all of those other technology areas, we're all under a different umbrella. So just so you guys kind of have a little bit of an idea. And people ask all the time, if you can get a copy of, like, hey, you're maybe looking to hire somebody, want to get an idea of job descriptions we've got, or org charts or whatever. We do have that stuff available on the Grow resource site. So you can find that stuff on there, and you can kind of get an idea for how we have some of our roles broken down if you're looking at adding anybody specifically to your team. So I'll start off today talking about some kind of lighting stuff right out the gate, kind of, 3 things to know. And the concepts here, and I'll break each one of them down a little bit, but light the talent, light the set, light for experience. And it's important that that stuff happen in that order, because I think sometimes it can get easy to kind of get that out of order, because lighting the talent really isn't exciting or sexy, but lighting for experience sure is. And man, if we've got extra budget money to spend, that's where we want to spend it, on movers and haze and all this other kind of stuff. But we gotta do things strategically, intentionally, in a certain order. And it all has to start with a talent, whether that's the pastor that's on stage or whether that's the worship team. Because if you can't clearly see the people that are on stage, then everybody's going to get disconnected from that, right? And you have to be able to light them well. So it's not just one light dead on somebody, but kind of like what we've got here, we're lighting from multiple different angles. So that way we're helping offset shadows on either side of my face. And if you just light somebody dead on, you lose any type of depth or definition. And it's too easy to kind of create a hot spot of how, my forehead is exploding, but other parts of me you can't see at all because they're dead, so I want to make sure that I'm lighting from multiple different points on my key light for my talent. But it's also important because, and I'm going to talk about this a little bit later, to consider backlighting as well. I know sometimes that may get something that gets cut just because we only have the budget to light from one direction, not multiples. But the benefit of being able to light from behind, now I get a little bit of a light outline around me when I'm on stage, and that's going to help me stand out from the background a little bit. So a lot of people like lighting or like having kind of a minimalistic set design, or a lot of black on stage, which is trendy. That would be another great name for a trendy church, like Black Set Church, which everything is dark and cool. But that also kind of blends in with the second idea of lighting the set, because if I'm not properly lighting my talent, they're just going to blend into whatever set I've got if I'm also not lighting my set well. So you'll notice in all of our campuses, our venues, anything you see online or in person, we don't have a lot of black space in what we would call like the speaking shot, like the center portion of the stage that's going to be on camera for a primary part, during the message or anything, because On camera, that black part can kind of tend to suck energy right out of the shot or out of the room. If 80% of the shot is dark, it just makes everything feel kind of a downer. So being able to have something that reflects light, where you can put some color in your backdrop, that's going to bring a lot more energy into the shot, and it's also going to help you give some more clarity between your talent and between the set. Because if I'm wearing a navy blazer or dark slacks or something like that, and if I'm in front of a dark background, it's going to be a whole lot easier for me to blend in with that on camera instead of being kind of separated a little bit with some color there. So that's definitely kind of a critical thing to consider. We want to be able to add depth to the shot. Again, if I'm not backlit from a talent standpoint and I'm not lighting my set, everything on camera just kind of like blends together. It's like a face in the middle of a black sea of fabric or something, okay? So it's important to kind of have that depth and that dimension. Think about it this way. There are a lot of scenarios where many of the people that are viewing our services are doing it through the lens of a camera. So that's especially true of an online audience at another campus. But people that are watching us live streaming, but also people that may even be in the main auditorium at our main sanctuary. Because unless you're in like the first 3 rows, you're in kind of like the spit zone, they're the ones that are looking at the pastor on stage. Everybody else is probably looking at a screen somewhere. Sometimes it's more convenient to do that based on where you're at in the room, or it's just more engaging and it looks better because everything is bigger and it's easier to read. I'm already looking at it to get Bible verses off of it and song lyrics, so I might as well just look at it to see the pastor and what he's doing. So most of our churches end up being video venues, even if we're not broadcasting it anywhere, because a lot of people are going to be staring at the screens. So how it looks on camera is critical, and how we are lighting our talent and lighting our set is obviously important. But then the third piece of this is lighting for experience, because like what Kellen was talking about earlier, especially with praise songs at the start of worship, we're trying to create an energy of excitement and enthusiasm, and this is fun. Now, you can take this way too far and get into kind of the flash and trash idea, which is you're strobing and stuff is flashing and going all over the place. And yes, it is possible to do that too much and be a distraction. There's no hard and fast rule of, well, if you do it like this, it's not distracting, but if you do it like this, then it is. There's no line of demarcation there. It's all completely up to personal taste and preference and style. But there are a lot of things that we don't do here just because we feel that they are distracting. So we don't, this is during Sunday service. Now, during our youth services, literally anything is on the table. Like, if you literally set every fixture to do nothing but strobe for 70 minutes, they would probably say it's the greatest event they've ever been to. They're like, all bets are off at that point. But on Sundays, where we have to be kind of seeker-friendly, visitor-minded people that are, coming to church, and we don't want to drown them with too much at once, we have to be mindful of what we're doing. So we don't shine lights into the crowd at all on Sundays. So we don't front light anything from the stage. So anything that's rotating on the stage or any type of a fixture, it's all shooting from the ground up and over the audience. Or if it's at the top of the stage, upstage, it's coming down and it's hitting something at the downstage edge of the stage before it ever gets out into the crowd. We don't want people to have to look through light to try to see somebody that's speaking or leading them in worship. We want that to be very easy without them having to feel like they're squinting, to try to find what's happening on stage, okay? So when you're lighting for experience, keep that in mind. We also, this is just kind of a recent change. Several of our fixtures are more profile fixtures where they've got like gobo features where you can have designs that shine and hit walls and stuff, which is great from an environmental, atmospheric standpoint. But our pastor asked us to make a change where we were using some fixtures we had on the ground that were shining up into the ceiling. We have clouds in the other, in our main auditorium, white panels in the ceiling to kind of diffuse the acoustics and everything. And so we were kind of uplighting that from the stage with these gobos, like the rotating designs on that. And he asked us now, because people in the back of the room can see that above them as they're looking at the stage. And our pastor kind of felt it was at the point where seeing too much clarity in what that design was kind of made it feel distracting. Like I'm now watching this specific triangle pattern rotate in the ceiling, and that may be catching my focus instead of looking at the stage. So now we run anything we're shining up into the clouds, we're running out of focus. So that way it's not you can't clearly see a design that now kind of catches your eye and distracts you a little bit, but we're all kind of, you can see that there's something there, but it's not pulling you in to wonder, does that look like a bird? Whatever. I guess kind of get where I'm going there. One other thing, everybody in churches wants to have haze, right? Everybody wants or smoke or fog or whatever we call it. How many people are using hazers at some point? There we go. We all know and we can agree to the fact that hazers are biblical. And I know this, I know this because the Israelites, when they were in the desert and they were following the presence of God, he was represented by a cloud. And clouds are nothing more than water-based haze. So we have thousands of years of history, right, proving that is a biblical model during worship. So it's okay if you need to present that to your leadership. That's totally cool. But haze for the sake of having haze doesn't do anything. It just looks like half your stage is on fire, okay? So really the win of that, if you're not familiar, and the point in doing it the right way is you want to be able to see the beams of light that are coming through that, so you can watch the movement or a rotation or something. You can, see that swath kind of cut through the crowd instead of just like you're looking at the face of a flashlight. I can see the surface shining, but now I want to see the whole beam shining as it kind of cuts through the stage. That's really the win to having haze. And so if you don't have fixtures that are going to be doing that type of an effect, or they're bright enough, or maybe you only have flashlights that are just doing this number, there's really not a whole point in fighting the haze battle, just to be honest. And if you don't have a great way to work with your fire alarm system, that's another consideration on the haze. Has anybody accidentally tripped the fire alarm before? Our lighting guy, Patrick, he was the first one with his hand up back in the back. And so that is also important because every building operates differently. There is no right or wrong absolute, because sometimes oil-based haze reacts differently than water-based. Some fire alarm systems, they've got sensors in the air duct that pulls air through above the stage. Some, you've got stuff on the walls. Some rooms behave differently based on temperature or humidity or how many people are in there. There is no systemic right or wrong with how you avoid tripping the smoke alarm in your building. It is important, though, to know where that line is so that you stay clearly on the other side of it. There are, obviously, because you don't want your whole AVL system shutting down during a service, because typically it's code that when the fire alarm goes off, it overrides the PA. It shuts off the PA so you can hear the alarms, and now you can't get all that back on without somebody from the fire department coming in and resetting the panel. So we want to avoid that. There are ways in some fire alarm panels where you can turn on what's called a concert bypass mode, where if the ducts or the sensors determine that there are smoke particulates in the air that would normally shut the system down, it just puts an alarm on the panel instead of shutting the whole thing down. Now, here's the catch with this, because I'm not necessarily advocating that everybody go do that. Some of us are probably doing that because we want to have smoke all the time and we don't want anybody to know or care about it. Okay. But every county, city, whatever, has a fire department jurisdictional code for how you have to act or react if you're disabling or modifying any alarms on your panel. Because if you shut your panel off just so you can haze your youth event, and then there's a fire in the kitchen and half your kid's wing burns down, your insurance company is not going to cover the damage because you intentionally disabled the thing that would have told you that there was a fire, and now your local fire jurisdiction or city or county or whatever has the ability to fine you for doing something, in discord with the code. So talk to your local fire department and see what their requirements are. Sometimes they won't allow you to disable a panel for any reason. Sometimes you can have what's called a fire watch person, which is, okay, we've disabled the panel, but we're now paying somebody like an off-duty fireman or a fire marshal or somebody to be a visible scout in the building. They're constantly patrolling the building for any signs of fire during this window when we have the panel disabled or whatever. So just educate yourself a little bit, work with your operations or facilities people if you have somebody like that at your church, but make sure you're talking to the fire department. Don't just shut stuff off just because you want to be able to haze your room, okay? Does that make sense? Because there are some pretty serious ramifications that could come from that. But again, also please understand that there is a point to having haze in the first place. And it really does have to go in tandem with the lighting package that you have. And we can talk more about that later during some of the Q&A if you want to get in specifically into that. So those are some things from a lighting standpoint. Now I want to talk about video, some three things that I think everybody kind of needs to be aware of. The first is just the idea of preventative maintenance. This is something that we really try to emphasize a lot here, and honestly, I think a lot of people probably forget about, but everything we own comes with some sort of a manufacturer's recommended cycle for updating, cleaning, replacing, modifying, whatever, okay? And so we need to be mindful of that because that helps us make sure we're taking care of our gear in the best way possible, make sure we're gonna get the most lifespan out of our equipment, it's gonna last and it's gonna work, and it's gonna save us money because if I take care of it, I'm not gonna have to send it in for repairs because the thing overheated. But if I'm cleaning out my projector filters every 100 hours or whatever the manufacturer recommends, that's gonna help maximize the lifespan of this device because I'm taking care of it the right way. So what I would encourage you to do is have some sort of a system set up where you or key volunteers, because chances are you've got volunteers that would be willing to help you. But we need to have a proactive cycle of maintaining our equipment instead of just being reactionary and waiting until the projector lamp blows, then I'll go change it. Wait until the front wash fixtures blow out, then I'll go replace them. Wait until a lighting fixture blows, then I'll go fix the lamp. We need to kind of have a cycle where we're getting ahead of the problem. Because if I can fix it on Thursday, that saves me from having the issue on a Sunday morning. And now I've got 10 minutes till doors open and I'm trying to, get a lift out so I can get all the way up in my projector that's 25 feet up so I can swap a lamp, okay? So if we can proactively do this during the week, that's gonna set us up for success. If we can have a monthly recurring cycle, just put it in a spreadsheet or have it as an item in, your calendar or something. Every 2 months or every 60 years or whatever it works for you, we're gonna go in and do this on a consistent basis. Do the same stuff with software updates on your computers. Be strategic with that, please, for the love of God. Turn off automatic updates, all right? But make sure that you're aware if there are critical system updates or some type of software patch for whatever, or if it's a type of equipment that regularly needs to get firmware updated or else it'll just randomly shut down in the middle of the day, Black Magic. Make sure you're constantly proactively, looking for that periodically so that you know when something has been released so you can download so that piece of gear is working, but please don't do it on a Friday or whatever day before your services. As you're doing this type of maintenance, do it earlier in the week. So if there's a compatibility issue, you've got time in the week to resolve that or roll something back. So we've had issues before. We're doing a firmware update on a converter and we did that and now it's incompatible with software on a computer. So now we had to change software version on a computer and we did that only to find out that the firmware for the counter that it was sitting on needed to be upgraded. So now we're like, well, crap, now something else is broken. So sometimes things snowball and we don't really realize it. That's why it's good to start this process earlier in the week so we have time to adjust. And with OS updates, please don't be the first one to download that. Let somebody else be the guinea pig, all right? And for those that, if you're running system software like ProPresenter or something else to run your content on, wait until those companies have announced that their software is compatible with a new OS before you do the OS upgrade, right? I don't even remember that one of the recent, it may be whatever's out now, High Sierra or something like that, is not compatible yet with ProPresenter. And there are people that have already done the OS update, but now their machines have bricked because ProPresenter doesn't work with that yet. So please make sure that you're mindful of all that. Have a plan for how to do your updates. And again, consider the maintenance cost or the ownership cost of some of this equipment. So if you have the ability to replace or update any of your equipment over the next couple years, consider moving away from lamp-based technology in video or even in lighting world. If you've still got lighting fixtures that are lamp-based, consider going to something that's LED. Projectors, laser projectors are coming down in cost dramatically now. You get a bajillion hours out of those. You don't have to change lamps. They don't blow the lamps out at random times. You just, still got to change a filter, clean a filter every now and then. But it cuts down on the cost of ownership and the time that has to go into this. Because we've all got something better to do than change a projector lamp, right? Probably, okay. Just be mindful of that. Number two, is just kind of the idea of online streaming. And I know these don't really have creative titles for my points, so that's how you know I'm not a pastor. This section, it didn't rhyme or start with the same letter. It wasn't a pun. It wasn't tweetable. It didn't spell out any acrostic type of a thing, like the points weren't God, like I got nothing. So this way is just online streaming, okay? So everybody wants to know about online streaming. Now, how many people are currently online streaming on the interweb? God bless Al Gore. If he hadn't invented the internet, none of us would be possible, right? How many people you're not online streaming, but you've thought about doing it at some point before the rapture? Anybody else? Remote vision, possible? Okay, cool. So we get a lot of people calling, asking questions, and we've got a team that can answer more of that if there's more in-depth stuff that you want beyond this. But just remember the fact that the quality of what you're watching on that little screen will never be better than what it is in real life, okay? So if it's poorly lit in real life, it's going to look like garbage on this. If your cameras were bought at Ed's Quickie Mart because they were on sale and they fit your budget of $9 per camera, then your online feed's not going to look any good, okay? The end product isn't going to be better than what you ingested in the first place. So just keep that in mind. Everybody wants to stream, and we want to get it out there, which is awesome. But be mindful of the fact that the quality is important to all this, because once you start streaming, now that's shareable and it's viewable, and people from here to Timbuktu can log on and see your Facebook live stream or your live stream account or whatever else. And so we got to ask ourselves, is this the representation of our church that we want people to have, yes or no? So we're not online streaming because it's cool and because people down the street do it, or because we think it's a great way to grow our church. Like it might be cool, and it's great that people down the street are doing it, and it's great that it is a great way to grow our church, but it is also part of our branding and marketing of who we are. And when I'm putting what we do out there now for the world to see at any time, I need to be mindful of the fact that they're getting a snapshot of trendy church, and is this the picture I want them to have of what we do or not, yes or no? That's why the quality of this is so much important. Getting it online for 8 people to watch may not be a huge win. To rush something straight into production, it's okay to take time and kind of vet it and quality control it and test it and have like a beta audience that can look at it and kind of give some feedback without ever announcing it to the public. Like, take some time putting something out there, but don't tell anybody, just so you can use that as an opportunity to get feedback. How does the audio sound? How is the lighting of this? Do we need to, can you see the pastor? With whatever quality the video feed is, do we need to be mindful of, we need to ask our pastor to stop wearing really tightly patterned shirts because of the moire effect, or it's really hard to see clearly what he's doing, so maybe we need to reconsider how we're doing graphics so we make the text bigger so it can be easier to read online, whatever. It's okay to test this stuff before we put it live into production. But just remember the fact that once it's out there, it's out there. And everybody now knows exactly who you are and what you do and what you represent. I would encourage you to not use the online thing as a way to, sometimes it kind of gets weird. Churches yeah, we had X number of views and all these other people are watching it, which is great, but it's really hard to actually know exactly how many people are tuning in or watching, okay? Is anybody doing Facebook Live? We got a handful of people probably that are doing that. Okay. Facebook Live, when you look at your attendance metrics, they consider somebody to be an engaged viewer if they paid attention for longer than 10 seconds before they clicked away. Okay? That doesn't really fit my definition of engaged viewer. And so as I'm looking at my numbers and saying, wow, we had 500 engaged viewers, how many people actually paid attention for longer than 10 seconds? So sometimes we don't really know exactly what kind of metrics we're getting from that. So be careful in using those numbers to promote or justify any other expenses or endeavors, or to rationalize why we need to do X, Y, and Z, because sometimes you don't really know. How we kind of track stuff is we don't consider it a viewer unless they've engaged for longer than 5 minutes, and we won't count an IP address twice. So that way, if my computer shut down and I've got to reboot for whatever reason, I'm reattaching to the stream, but I'm not counting it as 2 different hits. It's still the same IP address, only counts once. Does that make sense? So just be mindful of all this. Again, this is kind of a heads up for that. Last thing I'm going to talk about here is song lyrics. And I'm going to do a little kind of live representation of this here in a sec. But song lyrics have the ability to kind of make or break your worship set. Because, again, if I'm looking through the filter of this is a seeker-friendly environment, there's people coming to church that maybe have never been here before, or they don't know what's going on, I need to assume that there are people in the audience that don't know the words to the songs that we're singing. And if I don't know the words, and I can't get them clearly and promptly, then I'm just stuck being an observer on the outside looking in the window of this exclusive club where people know the special phrases and words, but I'm obviously not cool enough to be part of. Thanks for reminding me that I'm not a church guy and I don't know the words to your song. So I don't want to disengage or disconnect anybody because we're not doing a good job with song lyrics. So we have a higher level of expectation for our song lyrics operators than any other volunteer position that we have. There was a season where the people that were operating that were nothing more than what we called spacebar all-stars. Okay, anybody, maybe you have people like that where all you do is next slide, next slide, next slide. It's like, what's that little toy? It's like the little hummingbird thing that dips down. Did anybody see that Simpsons episode where Homer figured out a way to have that little bird, nobody watched The Simpsons at all? A couple people know that episode I'm talking about. I think that was the one where he wore a muumuu for part of that episode. Good times, anyway. That'll get stricken from the record, I'm sure, later. So we don't want the spacebar all-star that only knows how to go next slide, next slide, next slide. If you're the worship leader, I need you to know the song. And I need you to know where to go in the song. So when they say bridge, what part is that? Or, what does it sound like to be on the chorus? So we want you to see the chord chart ahead of time. It's on Planning Center. I want you to listen to the files ahead of time. It's on Planning Center. You're going to get there early. You're going to come to rehearsal. You're going to take notes. So that way you know what they're skipping or what we're repeating or whatever. If you're unclear, go talk to the worship leader. Go find info from somebody. But you are leading the audience in worship. You cannot just passively sit here and hope that it gets figured out. It is your job to go get clarity on this because people can't sing if you don't give them the words. So, again, we have a higher level of expectation for those people than any other position we do. Now, we are fortunate here now where over the last couple years we've been able to add kind of a feed in our intercom from the band. So we can hear the music director, the guy that's in the band that's on stage that's telling them, go to the chorus, repeat the tag, bridge, whatever. We can hear that in our intercom. So our people now know if they're jumping to different parts of the song or they're giving special instructions. Used to, we just had to wing it. And so Wednesday night services, when the Spirit was flowing and the prayer time has lasted a little bit longer than we thought and they're going to add a song, it was like, name that tune. It's like, what song are they getting ready to add? We don't know. And you hear the first couple bars and you're typing words in ProPresenter trying to, get the text recognition thing and click and drag it. Where are they? Where are they? Where are they? Now we can hear the band. Maybe not everybody is in that position. I get that. We also have the ability, we can hear kind of the guide track that is part of our Ableton click track that we use to guide the band and give backing vocals and kind of fill in with pad and whatever else. So there's a track in there that is offering cues to the musicians and the vocalists, bridge, chorus, intro, whatever. We can use that, and so we kind of know timing. If they're going to repeat an intro twice, we can hear the cue for that before it gets to the point where they say verse. So we've got a little bit of a heads up. I get that not everybody may be in that position. That's why prepping ahead of time is so critical, and asking those questions of the worship team is so critical. I also want to remind you that it's better to have nothing on screen than the wrong thing on screen. So if the worship team has gone off script or they've gotten lost and they're way off in the weeds on shout to the Lord, and you're like, I don't know where we're at right now. Instead of trying to figure it out, just clear everything and just wait till everybody kind of figures out what road we're on, and then we'll kind of get back in at the same time. It's just confusing if the wrong words are up there and it doesn't match what's happening on the stage. Or if you get the words up late and now the band is ahead of you and you're trying to catch up, don't hit like next, to where it's like, brrr, you're like flying through stuff. Don't do that either because that's just kind of jarring. People kind of freak out. And also be mindful of your formatting. Like if you're not doing IMAG, if you just have like full screen, like maybe like a graphic with lyrics on top, don't give me, Psalms 119 on one slide and expect me to sing the whole thing. because I'm not going to be able to read it or see it, and I'm getting lost because I'm sitting 80 feet away and my eyes aren't very good anymore, you know? So make it easy for people to see. If you're doing the full screen deal, try to limit it to just a few slides that would maybe naturally be grouped together during that song, a chorus or a verse or whatever. You know, just like in the olden days when we had, anybody grow up doing the overhead projector and sliding the transparency? Can I get an amen on that one? Yeah, I love those. Those days were awesome. But you know, you always had the one person, like when you have the sheet and then you cover it up with a piece of paper because you want like the dramatic reveal of what's coming up next. I don't want you seeing too much at one time, you know? So same thing. If I got to go full screen text, just give me like the verse, then reveal the chorus. Don't give me everything at one time. Does that kind of make sense? Okay. We're going to do a little bit of an example here. So I think Dylan's in the back. If you're back there, hey, Dylan. Okay. So he's putting the lyrics up for one of our Highlands worship songs. And so we're going to give a little bit of an example of how not to do the timing of the lyrics, but I think it's actually natural for us to do it this way because when we do lyrics, a lot of times we're used to just singing along with the song. And so we move at the pace that we would sing it. But a lot of times we don't realize how much can be lost in half a second or half a beat. And remember that there are people that the only way they can sing is if they're reading it, okay? So I'm in the song, you're my victory, reason why I sing everything. Okay, that didn't come up until I was like done with everything okay? But when I'm kind of in the flow, I'm worshiping in the booth, next slide. So now we're going to try to do it what we really try to emphasize here, which is when you're on the last part of a slide, I don't need to see that word while I'm singing it because my eyes have already recognized and acknowledged that, and I'm moving on. So I shouldn't finish a slide and still see the last word. So kind of how I encourage people is pretend like you're taking the last syllable in a slide and replacing that with the cue next, okay? You're my victory, reason why I next everything I need. You say, okay, see what I'm saying? So now the word, there's no other that deserves all next. You're my victory. So we're trying to stay ahead a little bit because I want people seeing it before they have to sing it. I'm trying to prepare them for what's coming. I'm leading them in worship, not reacting to them in worship. Okay, that's kind of the deal. All right. Hopefully they can auto-tune that in post and it won't sound nearly as bad. All right, so Mark Johnson is back in the back somewhere. I'm going to have him come up and finish us out on the audio piece of this. So anyway, so there's kind of three things to know from a lighting standpoint, video standpoint. Mark is going to cover some kind of principles on the audio front. Then we're going to do a brief window of Q&A here, maybe about some of these specific things that we've covered. And then at 1:30, we're going to take another break. We've got something with sugar out there is either like caffeine or cookies or sugar cubes, period, or maybe we'll go straight into the vein if you need that, like whatever. We've got some snacks out there, and then at 2 o'clock, we're going to have a full panel up here, and we'll do like a full breadth of Q&A stuff. So take it away, some things we need to know about audio. Let's hear from Mark Johnson, everybody.
And quite the comedian, Justin. You're a rock star, man. So, hey guys, my name is Mark Johnson. I get to serve as the audio director here at Highlands, which really means I get to play with a lot of fun stuff, just like all you guys do, and get to see a really lot of high-quality stuff that happens. So I think kind of the theme here was 3 things to know about audio, I guess is what it is. And, you know, I fight the fight, much like probably what you guys do, to always just jump to the tech on things. You know, tech is easy, tech is fun, tech works for me. You know, when I sit down and do it, it works. Sometimes people aren't always that way. You got to work on them for a little while. You got to get them to do what they need to do. So I guess the 3 things that I would do are relationship, quality, and then the design of things. Those are kind of the 3 themes that we'll do here real quick. So I'm not sure how much you covered earlier, but to me, relationship is 98% of what we do. Like, the Lord brings you people that are just crazy out of the blue that you could only pray for. Like, they just bring you talent and just amazing people to the table at the right time, after you've worn your knees out and after you've been through, you know, I just got to stick somebody here to get through a service. They're awful at it, but I got to be over here, and they just are going to help me get through. And he always delivers at the right time. So relationship is everything. And what we decided, or what we came to the conclusion about, is there's always a way to get everybody involved, always. But again, you fight the fight of quality. So that guy that can only change the batteries, you don't want him really touching anything at all. But you know what? He could change batteries in this microphone and save me 10 minutes from, mixing and going up on stage and, doing what I need to, going to a pre-service meeting. I can have 10 more minutes if he could do that. So what we've decided to do, or what we did, is we kind of made like a leadership development process. And it goes from changing batteries all the way to mixing services. It just covers anybody that comes here. So we went with the whole common. Everybody knows like A1, A2. Everybody knows that? Yes? Anybody? Well, we've added like A3. So A3 is batteries, general things, cables running around. People that are interested, my mom would be a great example of that, She can maybe send a text to me on some days, but you know what? She's got heart like you wouldn't believe. And we've got a lot of those people. Maybe you guys do too. I'm sure you all have people like that. But so we started with a process of that to where they can come on board and they can do that. Now, they either have it or they don't, that sort of thing. But A2 is the next step. A2 is what we call, growth track, pushing faders, doing video, stuff that does not require you to have a real lot of knowledge and, kind of deep, knowing of what's going on there. So that's obviously the A1, full band, know everything about the equipment, know what's going on there. But then we also have some other cool things too. Audio people are typically, is anybody a trumpet player? Anybody ever played trumpet? We got probably 10 of them. Tell me if you guys agree with me. I'm the best trumpet player in the world. Whatever it is that you play doesn't even compare to what I can do. I'm like the rock star. That's pretty much the common trumpet player mindset. That sort of goes for audio too. Am I right? Yeah. So we break that from the start, like just from the start. It's an honor to be here. It's, one of those things that, we don't say that mixing a service is what you're going to do. We say that being on the team is what you're going to do. We say that, if it's batteries, fine. If it's an A2, fine. If it's mixing, if it's being an A1, fine. But no matter what, it's just serving on the team. And that goes for maybe not on the audio team. So that means that as long as they're serving on any team, that's the win. That's what we go for there. So some of the other areas that we look at are we've got what we call a connect person, which I don't know most of you, I know a few of you guys, but there's those few people, most of them are usually worship related, that walk into a room and they're the life of the party. Everybody knows them. Everybody just smiles when you look at them. So I used to think when I started on this, I was like, man, it would be really cool to have somebody like that on my team, to make audio fun, to make it cool, to kind of be attractive, that sort of thing. And turns out you can do that. You can recruit some people. We've done everything from, the Lord has just brought that person to us, all the way to maybe you have maybe a third string acoustic player that doesn't really play that often, that, hey, would you like to serve a little bit more, on the audio team? And they're just crazy and they're awesome and they love it. That's a great example of somebody that you can recruit to do that. I don't know if you guys know this, but Highlands is in 16 locations, and we have a bunch of those that are portable. So we've got a bunch of set up and tear down crews that do all kinds of stuff there. So there's a place to serve there. Kind of the mindset between people, or what we do with people, is everybody always has another step. Like me, myself, I do, anybody on our team, everybody knows where they are and where they're going, or what their next steps are. So we're constantly breathing into them. We're constantly talking into them. We're constantly telling them and asking questions of them. What is your next step? What do you want to do? And some things that we remember, or that we think about when we do that, are the answer is no unless you ask. So if you don't ask, the answer is always no. So I could walk up to you and say, hey, would you like to be an A2? I will never know unless you answer my question, or unless I come and ask you. So that's kind of a really cool thing. And the other part I started this off is the Holy Spirit kind of deals with people when you ask those questions frequently. So if I'm always asking, and that's a constant presence that we do with our team, they're going to be thinking that way. So relationship is key, is huge, is just not, like I said, 98% of what we do. Then we go into quality, and this is where it gets to be fun, because there's this healthy balance of, man, I want these really cool toys, but man, do they cost a lot of money, or they're not available, or, hey, that big church in Birmingham has them, but there's no way in the world that I could ever afford them. Well, there's a way to look at that. There's a way to, kind of pull that apart. So the vision that we get from like our creative departments and from our worship teams, that's what drives what we can do. And then what we do is we kind of slip the quality in there. And I guess the best way is we find a way. I guess the best way to say it is everybody's attracted to things that sound good or that are done with excellence, that look good on stage, that sound good in the speaker system. If I was, low passed here, you'd just be sitting there listening to the audio and just going, man, I wish that guy, which by the way, Bill, you're doing a great job, but he'd be like, man, just get me back there, just give me a few minutes. That's the whole goal, is to get rid of that and to do that. So quality is the lens that we look through. But then there's the reality of it. It's the checkbook side of it. So, again, there's a bunch of different ways to do that. It's the healthy tension between the whole process. So I'll address more about that here in a few minutes. We're going to get into actual equipment and that sort. But some of the things that we do for quality are, again, back to the people. We go for, I don't just want a guy to show up at 6:15 when it's rehearsal time and to leave at 1:05 when it's time to go. No, I want somebody that's there, that's going to pour into you and to the team and to be a part of it. So it's modeling that, it's doing that, it's quality everywhere. It's our training process is made up of 4 things. We're looking at 4 things. It's not just excellence in what they do. It's what's their heart look like? Where are they in life? What are they doing? How do they interact with community? That's the second one. Do they literally come in and go out and that's it? Or are they hanging out? Are they enjoying people? Are they, taking part and being a part of the body of Christ? Next thing is excellence. That's obviously very, evident on what we're talking about there. And the last one is, attitude. Can I get an amen? Yeah, we'll just leave it at that. So sometimes that's hard to deal with, or that's the thing that we always go to, but it honestly is the easiest to deal with. It's a coffee, it's hang out with them, it's, bro, why'd you do that, and just speaking into people. So having great quality with people is, of course, a very good thing. Then we get into, I guess, quality and, I don't know, how do we repair things? How do we fix things? We always do it with quality. The common theme that I've got on that is we always bring people with us. So it's always done in relation. I may be an expert at fixing, whatever it is, the profile console up there, the faders. Anybody have a profile? Yeah, faders just kind of go crazy sometimes. But, it's easy. You pop it off, 1,000,000 tiny little Allen head screws. It takes about, 45 minutes, but it's easy. But you know what? I don't need to be the only guy that does that. Like, I could bring somebody with, and now you can do it, and you can do it, and you can bring somebody else with you. Now I got 10 people that can do it. Because when you got 16 campuses, there's no way I can go around to 16 campuses. Or, you may have another job. I don't know if you guys are all, work for the church that you're at, or if, you're volunteers yourselves. But, it's building that team. It's taking those next steps. So, next thing with quality is back to that trumpet player mentality. Who are you getting feedback from? Is it, I started with Highlands about 10 years ago with a campus pastor in Auburn, War Eagle. His name is Brandon Isbell, and or he was the campus pastor at Auburn. Now he's Opelika, but he is very musical. And man, would he call out every little detail, every single detail. But that's not normally the case for pastors. Usually they give you something like, that didn't sound right. Or, it needs to be a little loud, or this needs to be a little louder, or whatever it is. And you're like, man, I'm just blasting that right now, and you got to kind of translate what that means is really what it is. So, again, relationship with that campus pastor. What does he mean? What is he saying when he actually says that to you? What's the end goal? Is it really that the bass guitar is just slamming? No, not necessarily. It's that he really likes drums and he hears only the bass then, and, it's listening to what he wants to do, and it's having that relationship with them. That's key, and that's very important. So who's giving you the feedback? And you got to look through the lens of who that is. And then who are you learning from? Who do you hang out with? Who do you learn techniques from. What YouTube videos are you watching? What mixes are you listening to after the fact? A common practice that I used to do every time I mixed, and I was actually really grateful when we went from, well, I guess CDs and then to digital, USB recordings. So literally, you just slip in a CD or a USB now, and I'd move it to my car, and when I'd drive home, I'd listen to my mix. It's fresh on my mind. I know what I did. I remember my fingers, what they were doing. I remember what I was thinking, and reviewing it like 30 minutes after I'm done with the service. It's a great time to do that. And then I'd always pick an environment not everybody has a room like this, but I'd go into a room, and I'd play it back in a large room, because of course it sounds a little bit different, in a big room versus in your car. And then the other thing is preparation for it. Like before the service, we used to do rehearsals earlier in the week. Now they're on Thursdays. But what I used to do is when the band was on stage, I'd record what the rehearsal was. So just record it, and then everybody uses Planning Center now. There's the original recording that's usually on Planning Center, YouTube, whatever it is that you get it from. And I'd put them on a CD where it was, the real recording and then what I just did. And then the next song, real recording and what I just did. And nobody ever got that, because that was just awful. That was absolutely awful. But it got me in the mindset of, man, everybody just showed up on stage and played that, the first time. And it just showed me how much work I had to do before Sunday hit. And it was just that mindset of quality. It was that mindset of repetition. It was that mindset of, hey, man, we just did this song, for the past 8 weeks in a row. And, man, I'm still not making it sound any better, and just doing what it takes to get it done. And then do you travel to other churches? I went to one that does a really good job, a really, really good job at worship a few months ago. And I kept getting in my mind, they did one thing that got in my mind, and it was they rehearsed all day on Thursday, like all day, like 8 a.m. to, it was dark for a long time. And I just remember I was watching. I was like, no, this isn't going to work. That's the quality that they do. They just have to do it repetition after repetition. I needed to learn a different way. It just wasn't going to work for me. But they are a phenomenal church. They do a great way. There's things that they do well, and there's things that I come back with, and I go, there's no way that I would ever do that. And then that goes for individual things as well. So the last thing is, when you're doing quality, I don't know, do you ever have mixers that, I call them coffee cup mixers, so they're, literally standing there and, drinking their coffee, and they move a fader, and then they're drinking their coffee, and, that's great, and it may sound great, it may, but in my mind, what I think as far as quality is, there's always something standing out, always, like no matter what. If I'm ever like, peace out, see you later, this mix is great, I'm not the right guy for the job, So there's always something that's standing out. And I'm not saying you got to, roll up your sleeves and be 18 menus into your console all the time. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that something's standing out. You can always be making some sort of a tweak somewhere. And that's really important with quality as well. And then the common theme through it all is every single thing that you do, who are you teaching? Who's with you? They may have zero talent whatsoever. But if the Lord put them in your path and they're showing up, there's something that they can do. There's something that the Lord has called out in them, that he's trusting you to be the one to find that, to peel back that banana and to find that. So that's kind of your mantle that you get to do. Then the last thing is, and this may be a lot of Q&A on this, I have no clue, but it's the design of things. The design is, to me, people are number one, or relationships are number one, and then quality is always number two. It's always very high. And then the third is, how are we going to do that? How are we going to make that happen? So, an environment like this, it's a fixed environment. You can look at the plans, you can look at the acoustics, you can look at the equipment, and you kind of have your choice of what you want to do, fitting within a budget. This is pretty normal. This is a good-sized church, this room here. But a lot of times, or at least for Highlands, I don't know if you guys do this, those variables can be different. Like, you go into a portable environment. We've got some that are in theaters. We've got some that are in gyms. I can't always change that. It's a gym. That's the way it's got to be. There's no way around it. It's a gym. So now you put a a huge PA in there, and you put 12 people on stage, and you put a pastor on stage, and that's not always the case. You can't always control all those variables. So some of the things that we do is, from the start, we go after great relationships with the people that in portable environments that are hosting us, or that will allow us to do things there. So we ended up one of the recent installs that we did. We proposed, hey, we'd love to. It was basically a gym. They made it a gym. It was just a contractor that made a gym. It had basketball hoops. It had lines on the floor. It was a nice gym, but like if you holler, it just holler. It just keeps it. It rings for 30 seconds in the room. That's gonna be really hard to have any church ever in there. So we volunteered. We said, hey, we'd like to put acoustic panels in there. And something happened. This was minor, and there's probably only a few people that would actually know about this. But I got word back from them. We went into it thinking, this is what we need for church. And immediately, before we even started the church, they came back and they said, man, the basketball games that we have in here are just not fatiguing us anymore. Like, we love it. Thank you so much. And really, it was a blessing for us, because it was like, there's no way we're going to achieve a great sound out of this thing. But they come back, and they were just grateful beyond belief. So it was great. That's a whole different, kind of conversation on what you can give and take for people in a portable environment. But that's something that you got to consider in a design atmosphere there. Let's see. So what we're doing is, as far as design though, is we're always looking at tech, and we're always looking at what's next, and we're always looking at, what is it that we could do different. A prime example. One is not on the 600 band. Is anybody aware of the 600 band? Anybody? So basically what has happened is they've auctioned off I think it's 618 to 698 or something like that, which Shure microphones, that's like a primary range for a lot of those. So basically it was, when you buy a wireless microphone, it's there's those little, cards, or anytime you buy like your kids a little wireless device, it always says, this complies with the FCC rules of it will, receive interference from other things and all that. Same with Shure. They're selling you a great product, but it's licensed on a band that is not owned by Shure, that is not owned by you, that is not owned by anybody. They're saying, hey, you can go ahead and use it, but if somebody walks into your room and has some sort of device that has a bunch of garbage, or turns another microphone on the exact same frequency, sorry, we can't really help you. So that's just a constant thing. Now they have digital devices that help with that a little bit, but for the most part, that's just a common thing. I mean, you can't stop anybody from coming into your worship services and doing that. I mean, well, I suppose you could, pat them down or look at them, or, whatever it is, check their backpack. I suppose you could do that, but hey, enjoy church service. Let me pat you down before you come in here. I don't know. That might be a distraction right there. But that's a real design concern. So basically, at least Highlands, we've got a bunch on the 600 band. We're having to phase it out. That's a big expense. You can't just get a new crystal, pop it out. I mean, I suppose you could, but you probably pay just as much in labor to have somebody to do all that than to, just buy a new unit. So that's a concern too, that you really can't control ever. But the other thing, when you're designing these systems, we always fight the fight of trying to make them cookie cutter as well. Does anybody ever do that too? Like, well, I had this console here, so I want to put that there. Or I did it this way here. And there's always constant change when you do that. Primary example is in that room over there, our other room. We used a D-Show, which is a venue platform. Bought it roughly 10 years ago. It was like that consistent, pickup truck that just looks like junk, but just runs. It's always, when you turn it on, it's always there. And it did a great job, great job. It was time for that to phase out. So what we did is we looked at the greatest technology available. And right now, the best technology right now is it's basically audio over IP. There's a bunch of different standards. Dante is right now the current one that seems to be doing pretty well, and we have decided to do that as well. So over in the other room, we put some L500s, which is an SSL console. And we use the Dante background with it. And basically, we extend that to this room here and to our chapel on the other side of the property. So any of the sources that come in here can get on the network and be used anywhere. So if our pastor walks down here and says, hey, I want to do a baptism right here with a microphone on, which I don't recommend, but if he throws out something crazy, the answer is yes. I don't have to extend a bunch of wireless from the other room. I got a Dante network from right here, and I got a great coverage from this floor right now. So the answer is yes, no problem. So we're meeting the vision of what the pastor is doing, but we're also doing it with technology that's kind of cutting edge there. So the other part, kind of going into more detail about this, is our main room, and this is a big concern probably for a lot of you guys. Actually, let me just ask you the question: how many of you guys have an online mix that you send to other people? So it's probably, I don't know, 15 people. So of those, how many have a dedicated mix just for what goes online? Maybe probably almost all 15 of those. Is that right? So do you guys, just nod your head, do you guys actually have a room, like a split with a room, where you do a mix? Coming soon. All right, I like that. That's good. Split with a room. Is anybody doing just like a board mix? Straight off the board? Nothing wrong with that. That's fine. Obviously you can take it to the next level if you do it there, but there also introduces a bunch of other variables with that as well. But I'm glad that you guys are able to do a separate board mix. That's what we do here. The way that we view it is, I don't know what the exact numbers are, so please don't quote me on this, but that room has 2,600 seats. We do 5 services on Sunday, 1 of them on Monday, so 6 services that we do. Basically, I think it's 90% of our people attend a campus. That means 90% of the people that watch Highlands listen to the mix that goes through our broadcast mix. Pretty important, in my opinion, is what that is, which obviously you guys see that as well. But that's a big expense, like a huge expense. Like, it's a whole nother studio. It's a whole nother everything. But the benefits of that are you get a mix dedicated just for them. I don't have to make concessions in the room or buy plugins and mix, on a sub-layer of my console for the online mix for 90% of my people. It just seems odd to me. It just didn't seem like a good ratio. So we do that, and it works great. So talked about, kind of permanent and portable, talked about IP-based, audio over IP stuff, broadcast mix. Does anybody, do you guys all have virtual sound check? Do you know what I mean when I say that? Does anybody not have that? Not a disaster, not bad. Here's the way I view it. Maybe we use the main room. The main room console is, it's on maybe 20 hours out of the week. Well, actually right now we're leaving it on just for a different reason, but roughly in use 20 hours out of the week. That's rehearsals, that's services, that's the whole deal. What about all the other hours? Could we be training people? Could we be bringing people in? Our mindset is this room right here is always available. Like, with the exception of events like this, during the week, 8 to 5, and even at night, a lot of times, this room is available. Come on in. You can be training. You could be training. And our goal and what we're working towards is, hour, 2 hour, 4 hour slots where people can just virtual sound check. Does everybody know what I mean by that? It's you're recording multi-track versions of your band. You can play them back with a push of a button, usually through a computer, or always usually through a computer. And you can basically mix it live as if you're having a band on the stage. The thing that I like to call about this is that's the safe environment to screw up. You know what I mean? Hey, when I turn this button, I don't have to turn all the heads of all the people in the room or the band and be like, whoa, what just happened there? It's your safe environment to touch the buttons and figure out what each thing does. So, are we getting close to out of time here? I guess we could just hit the rest mostly in question and answer, but that's it. Relationship quality design. Thank you guys very much.
Hey, let's hear it for Mark Johnson, everybody. Marky Mark. And I want to ask one question as we go to break. So you mentioned the importance of relationships. How critical is it to have a healthy relationship between the audio team and the worship team?
I'd pack it up and go home if you didn't have a great relationship. Quick funny story, a worship leader in Auburn, he was on stage. It was like motion night or something, I don't know what it was, and he literally looked back at me and his eyes got big like that. It was like downbeat, he's rolling. It was like the first time we were doing motion night or whatever. And, I just know him. I know him pretty well, and I either think he has a problem or he needs to get off stage, if you know what I mean, or there's something wrong. So put the A2 there and walked up, and I'm looking over here, and basically it was a new song. Does anybody know what happened?
Confidence monitor.
Boom! People all standing in front of the confidence monitor like that, and he's like, I don't know the words to this song. So it's super critical to just kind of have a relationship. Like, just hang out. That's really what it is. It's just like literally just get to know them, just know what's going on. And it not only helps you kind of offline, like, hey, man, that EG player, we need to work on that tone kind of thing. That's a personal type thing. I'm never going to walk up to an EG player and go, bro, that was awful. I'm never going to do that. I'm going to use a relationship. Like if I don't know the guy, I'm going to go to the worship leader, worship director, and I'm going to say, this is what I felt. You handle, maybe you just had an off day or something, and the worship director's like, yeah, okay, we'll just give him that one. So anyway,
so
very important.
There's probably no greater potential tension area in our worlds than that one with an audio engineer, and because you've got a technician mind and you've got creative minds, and sometimes they're not always on the same page of what we're doing, how, when, why, what a rehearsal should be like, or what. That's why it's so critical for us that audio and worship are part of the same department. They're getting the same vision. They're part of the same teams. They're in community all the time together, and it has a lot of dividends for us. But building that relationship outside of Sundays is critical. So for everybody that's leading a team, you got audio people, get your team around the worship team as much as possible. It doesn't need to be an us versus them. We're on the same team. We're working together. We're co-worship leaders. We're using each other's strengths to help create an environment here. It's not about one having their side more visible or heard better than the other. It's not about our ego thing, but we're working together to create this environment. So we're going to take a break. We'll be back at 2 o'clock. We got snacks out there. Last session coming up, some tech Q&A plus other Q&A from other things we covered today. We'll be back at 2. See you then.